Welcome to Elevate, the masterclass where we dissect the elements of exceptional achievement and lifestyle design with a focus on personal growth and real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Tyler Chesser.
Elevate Nation, welcome back. This is Tyler Chesser. I'm so thankful to have you here. And I am absolutely blessed and grateful to be here with my friend, Nimesh Patel. Nimesh, how are you?
I'm great. Great to see you.
Absolutely. Great to see you too. And we got the fish flying around behind you.
Yeah,
we got some beautiful colors there. I'm feeling very soothed right now.
It is a very soothing space. Yeah, that's why we have that here. It helps keep the kids under control a little bit. We put them in the quiet spot in here.
That's awesome. And I know the YouTube listeners are taking a deep breath and they're just settling into their chairs right now, and they're ready for a great conversation. And I know I am. I'm ready to take it to another level, and I know Elevate Nation is as well. So I want to welcome Elevate Nation back to the show, where our mission is to identify and apply how the best of the best raise the bar personally and professionally to achieve greatness in real estate and beyond. And this is where we're going to discuss the mindset, the habits, the routines, the systems, the tools, the strategies, and so much more from individuals who are elevating to a life without limits so that you can do the same for yourself or even more for yourself. And this is a masterclass for leaders and those looking to achieve uncommon results and purposeful outcomes through real estate investing and ultimately in their lives. And I got to do a little bit of housekeeping here. If you appreciate what we're doing, please subscribe to the show, give us a rating, a review, a 5-star review if you're so inclined. It certainly helps us, and it helps reach more people with this message. If you've appreciated this message, just do us a favor and spend 15 seconds and give us a little thumbs up there, and certainly helps. So appreciate that. And with that said, I want to dive into the show. I'm really excited to introduce you to Dr. Nimesh Patel, who is a husband, married for almost 18 years, and a father of 4 young boys. Living in Colorado, he takes advantage of the mountain lifestyle with his family, skiing in the winter and hiking 14,000-foot peaks in the summer. And let me tell you, I've done that one time. I couldn't breathe for 4 days. It was unbelievable. So kudos to you on that one. His active family keeps him on the move for sure. For his day job, Nimesh is a board-certified orthopedic trauma surgeon. While he primarily focuses on orthopedic trauma, he also takes care of patients needing total hip and total knee replacements. After graduating from Emory University, he obtained his medical degree from the University of Arkansas for medical sciences. His orthopedic training was completed at the Ochsner Clinic Foundation in New Orleans, Louisiana. During this time, Nimesh decided to spend an additional year of training focusing on orthopedic trauma. He completed his fellowship at Harvard Medical School. He currently practices at the largest private orthopedic group in the state of Colorado. He's part of the AO faculty, which is an international organization that conducts conferences teaching orthopedic trauma skills to orthopedic residents in training, as well as practicing orthopedic surgeons. He has lectured around the country. Also, residents rotate with him and some of his partners where they lend hands-on orthopedic trauma surgery. In addition to this, Nimesh is working on growing a real estate portfolio. He's a founder and principal of Lion Park Capital, LLC. He has served as a limited partner as well as a general partner on several deals. His interest, and obviously that of Lion Park Capital, lie in raising capital for and being an active member in multifamily apartment syndication platform. So, Nimesh, with that said, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit more about yourself behind the bio. Who is Nimesh as a man?
Yeah. First of all, Tyler, thank you so much for this opportunity. I've really been looking forward to it. So it's really enjoying our time together. Basically, I grew up in Atlanta. I was there with my 2 younger sisters and grew up in a kind of a regular middle-class family, and went to college. So while we were there, we, like many families, had some financial struggles, and quickly became aware that whatever I achieve is going to likely have to be on my own, and there's not going to be a safety net kind of there to back me up, but which is perfectly fine, just because that's how majority of people kind of go through life. So with that in mind, I had to be very thoughtful of the path I chose, and as a result of that, right or wrong, I wasn't overly aggressive or risky, and medicine was something that provided a formula, if you will, that if you work hard enough and get through those steps and kind of jump through those hoops, then you end up with a pretty good career and comfortable lifestyle. And it's kind of almost like a little cookie cutter format if everything goes well. So from Atlanta, where I went to college, did med school, residency, and fellowship, and did all my training, ended up here in Colorado, where I got my first job out of training. And I've been here 10 years now, and I've been very happy. I've been very fortunate to have found my job that I don't plan on leaving as long as they don't kick me out or anything like that. But no, it's been a really good ride from that perspective. And I think now that I've reached this state where I've been in practice for 10 years, I'm kind of getting to a point where I have a mature practice, and things are kind of almost like this steady state, or almost like a cruise control situation. I've started to put a lot more thought into, well, okay, I've kind of done all these things for myself. Now, where do I go with, my kids, and how do I get them on the same path, kind of get them to a point where hopefully they'll reach, similar lifestyle and goals in their futures. So it's kind of really taking on this idea, like, how do I find the formula for them and kind of figure out what's the right thing? Because, what I did may not be what they want to do. They may not want to go to medicine, which is perfectly fine, because unless you really love it, this is not the path just to be forced into. I mean, there's plenty of other possibilities plenty of other ways to be profitable with the amount of time and energy you spend in for something like this. So, going back to the assumption that they may not want to do this, I spend a lot of time now thinking about how do I teach them the right principles and kind of mindset, and how to think about things that they can then apply to whatever line of work they choose. And part of doing that is really me first taking that upon myself and going from there in terms of how do I grow individually and understand those big concepts.
You seem like you're an individual who's just so driven towards creating a legacy, and also thinking ahead of, not only thinking back towards, your upbringing, to where you even mentioned maybe there wasn't necessarily a safety net there in some ways. And so you had to get creative and resourceful in your thinking and say, all right, what's a safe and a prosperous future look like for me? And perhaps that was through medicine for yourself. And now you're also being so cognizant and thinking, all right, well, I've created a mature practice. I'm, developing other vehicles in my life that are giving me more than just a mature practice and more than just what I set out for in medicine by investing in real estate. And you're also thinking ahead of, how can I set up and lay a groundwork for my children to think ahead towards what is the best way for them to design their life. So I'm just curious, where does that come from? What's the drive? I mean, what moves you to sort of approach your life in that capacity?
I think you just never know where things are going, right? So like, we can say, well, okay, I've reached my personal goal of becoming a physician, getting settled down, having a family, having a steady job. And I think what always is in the back of my head, and maybe this has to do a lot with my upbringing and kind of just livelihood as I kind of grew up through all these stages, is you never know when things can change. So right now, like, even though I'm a surgeon, maybe let's say I injure myself, or I physically can't do the work I'm doing. Maybe my practice has something happen to it, healthcare changes where it makes practicing medicine very difficult. Maybe this will never happen, but some crazy virus takes over the world and crushes the world's economy, right? Like, who would think that would ever happen, right? And upend everyone's life. So you just never know. I feel like when this kind of outside disruption can occur, and it's almost always being ready to pivot to something else and not kind of have all your eggs in one basket, essentially. And now having that freedom mentally, I think is kind of a big part of just you enjoying your current life. And I want to make sure like I'm able to pass that on, that kind of mindset.
Yeah, I just love the concept of just mental freedom more than anything, and just having an understanding that you have options if you need to pivot due to any sort of outside disruption, because it's not if, but when, right? I mean, we've been dealing with a virus situation, but what else is going to happen in the future, right? I've talked about this several times recently, but I read a book called, The Black Swan, and one of the big things of my biggest takeaways there is that the uncertain is certain. It's going to happen. Yes. We just don't know what's next. And history certainly repeats itself in so many different ways, but it's not always the same. So what are you doing to give yourself options and malleability to be prepared to thrive and to design your life? So I love that. And, talk to me about sort of as you've sort of grown your practice and as you're investing in real estate, why did you choose multifamily specifically as another avenue for yourself?
Yeah, good question. And once I decided that I felt like I needed to just have something else available besides my day job, if you will, I looked at different opportunities, and one of the constructs or one of the lanes I kind of set myself in where I didn't want to kind of veer from was that I wanted to maintain what I do. I really enjoy being an orthopedic surgeon. This is not a situation where I'm looking to quit my day job or go find something else to do because it's just not working out. I really enjoy it, but I'm trying to protect what we've achieved and kind of find a different avenue. So real estate, by the time I came across to that, was something that, with the right knowledge and background and connecting with the right people, you can develop this line of income passively, which is a big part of things. It's not overly laborious. By the time you put in the right systems in place, connect with the correct right people, you can do this on the side despite having a full-time job. We all know a lot of people who've done that, and as they get to a certain scale, then maybe they got to quit their day job. But I'm looking for something not only for myself and my immediate life and my current family situation to protect that, but again, I've got 4 boys that I got to raise, and I got to kind of develop some kind of structure for them that if they choose to utilize it, great. But if they don't, that's okay. I just want to make sure that they understand that it's not only a single path and there's multiple things you can do. Yeah. So real estate kind of solves 2 of those issues for me specifically.
This episode of Elevate is brought to you by CF Capital, a real estate investment firm formed by myself and my partner, Brian Flaherty, where we invest in multifamily real estate communities across the Southeast United States. If you'd like to learn more about our approach, our mission, our acquisition criteria, and how you can learn more about future opportunities, visit cfcapllc.com. Again, that's cfcapllc.com. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine you looked at multifamily specifically and liked the risk profile, you liked the trends of where that's going, and you felt like that was not only could you develop systems around that, but you thought that the asset class provided you the longevity of what you're looking to accomplish in your life. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah. And you mentioned multifamily specifically, and as everyone who has been on your show and right, it's the unlike single family home where if you're out of a tenant for a short period of time, I mean, you have zero income coming in. Your risk profile definitely diminishes with multifamily because ultimately, if you have a couple of tenants who aren't in your apartment complex, you have multiple others that are covering your expenses and mortgages and rent or your kind of other large expenses. So that's extremely helpful so that you're essentially preserving your capital and still trying to hopefully generate income on the side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I want to dive in with you, just especially being a busy professional, a physician, and being able to develop this on the side of your main gig, I'd love to talk about systems. I mean, how are you able to systematize? And, because as you mentioned, perhaps in some ways it may not be laborious to a certain degree, but you've got to build your systems so it is that way. So I'd love to, what are some of the most important systems that you've developed that's gotten you to that point?
I think what's helped me the most is probably compartmentalizing things. So when I'm at work as a surgeon, I am full attention, full energy, and take care of patients. When I'm at home, to that point, I really try, just like my family's been very supportive, wife and kids have allowed me to kind of be successful as my job as a surgeon. I want to return that favor to them and be very protective of my time with them. So I do everything possible. While my kids will probably remind me and be vocal that I fail at it, but at least I have some kind of guidelines to try to protect their time as well, because that's just important. So as it carries over to multifamily and kind of growing the business perspective of things, I've learned that I need to do A, B, and C, and I compartmentalize time for that. And whether it's early in the morning to dedicate an hour or two, or maybe an hour or two at the end of the day after the kids have gone to bed, one of my rules is I can't have that regularly kind of interfere with, again, my career as a physician and my family time. And I've really kind of set those walls appropriately so I can really get that work done.
So it sounds like you're an individual who likes to batch time rather than work a little bit here, work a little bit there, and maybe get a little bit unfocused. So talk to me, what are some things that you batch? I mean, what are some important sort of dominoes that you can knock over in your business that give you a little bit of leverage in your results?
So I would say, it's a classic kind of situation where you can never close on a deal if you don't put offers on deals. You can't put offers on deals if you don't have deal flow. You can't have deal flow if you don't have access to brokers and sending you deals. So it has to be a very structured system where once you've decided the plan that you need to achieve, or the plan you have to execute to achieve a goal, then you can just hope for the best and say, how come, step D isn't falling through even though you haven't done steps A, B, and C. So it's very regimental. Once you kind of blocked off some time, it's executing on each of those steps and being very kind of, structured about it and very actionable from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody's got to develop their own plan, their own strategy, their own blueprint, because it is all about your outcome. But it is from there, it's about getting clear on exactly how can you reverse engineer that big outcome, whether it's a year vision, 5 years, 10 years, whatever that may be. What's your big goal and how can you reverse engineer that and put that into action? What can you do to timestamp the process? What can you do to put it on the calendar and leverage other people, leverage other tools, other technologies to leverage your results? Because at the end of the day, I don't know about you, Nimesh, but I can't do it all myself. I got to have other people helping me, whether they're on my team or whether they're a contractor, an independent contractor, whether they're a virtual assistant. I mean, there's so many different ways and so many different people that want to engage with us as investors to help us get to our goals, because look, it's also beneficial for them as well. So I really honor that. And it is about, hope is not a strategy, right? It's getting crystal clear on what are the steps look like and applying that immediately. And then also course correcting, because you're going to make mistakes. And as you even mentioned, perhaps your family is going to call you out at some point and saying, hey, look, you're not present with us all the time. Come on. We all make mistakes. So what are you going to do to course correct and act more appropriately next time? So it's so important, not only for our business, but for our life, and something that, a concept that every listener today can apply immediately. So I'd love to know, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, you touched on a really good point. I mean, and this is one of the things that attract me to multifamily real estate. It is very much a team sport. You're not going to take on these big projects by yourself. You're going to have the right members in place who are much better at you at a certain aspect of the whole project. And you're going to help coordinate that. And you're going to hopefully get a partner who is on the same page with you. And together you kind of figure things out. And once you start piecing all that, and once you have that blueprint and that plan in place, it's really plugging the pieces to kind of see how do you fit everything together to execute on that plan of yours. So I think that's what's been really comforting from that perspective.
You mentioned brokers as being integral in terms of a part of your team.
Yeah.
What other members of your team have really helped you accelerate your success?
So, yeah, I think in addition to brokers, I mean, that's step one. Step two is once you get the property, you can't be the one fielding every single phone call and handling all the day-to-day details. So having the right property management, right? Like, I mean, having the right people who have an aligned interest, right? If they don't do a good job taking care of your property, they're not going to get you as a repeat customer. And you got to trust who you work with. You got to, communicate with them on a regular basis. And I found in some of the deals I've done in the past, that's what's been most effective, is having that right person that I can pick up the phone and get a hold of them right away. It's such a relief, because I'm not always in the dark about what's happening on a property. I can't go visit every single day, because again, like we talked about, is setting those guidelines of I'm going to maintain my current day job. I'm going to pay attention to my family. And this is something that we're trying to build in addition to all of that. And I know not everyone does it this way. And I know people are able to quit their jobs and dedicate 80 hours a week, but the way I'm going to structure this from the ground up is something that's sustainable on all fronts.
One thing that, 100% I agree. In totality, your property manager is one of, if not the most important member of your team, and their team structure as well. So definitely important there. I mean, I know I've had horror stories myself with bad property managers. I've gotten rid of some. I've grown. I've gotten better ones, and I've kind of improved the process as I've gone. But another thing that I find interesting about what you're doing, and I think is certainly a nugget for listeners out there, is that you've found the opportunity to be a passive investor as well, which has given you the opportunity to leverage your own capital and obviously time. Talk to me about your experience there and why you've made the decision to, be involved in real estate as a passive investor as well as an active participant in some ways.
It's been great. I mean, it's basically getting paid to be educated, right? So I was able to partner up with a mutual friend of ours, Vikram, and Ahmed Ravi through him as well, through Viking Capital. Two just fantastic guys, extremely successful in this space. And Vikram and I went to college together, so I've known him a long time. I trusted him, so we were kind of talking about this, and I said, okay, yeah, let me take part as a limited investor, and that's what got me in the door. And through that, I would pick his brain through people I met through him, like such as yourself, and talk to people. And I slowly started putting pieces together. So, okay, well, something that started off as essentially a black hole of information where I just had no clue what was going on. You slowly start chipping away and making progress to a point where I feel like I can have more of an active role. Even where I've been a general partner, I didn't do it by myself. I was able to be a co-manager. And again, that then opens the route to that next level of exposure, which is operations and understanding the finances a little bit more, and kind of getting to the nitty-gritty details as opposed to just getting the basic kind of one-pager pro forma that gets sent out to a lot of investors. And now as I kind of achieved that goal, or kind of reached that hump, and now it's kind of like, okay, well, I think I can start piecing this together with, again, getting the right team members in place, and maybe partnering with the right person to see, could we do one of these on our own? And it's just kind of a building process like everything else.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I that's one of the reasons why I love real estate is there's so many different opportunities to become involved, whether you want to put the deals together yourself, whether you want to work with others and help raise capital, whether you want to invest your own capital. And also, I love the distinction there that you mentioned. It's a way to learn as well as get paid to learn.
Yeah.
Because if you're not gaining the learning experience at the same time, you're missing a great opportunity. So anybody who's looking to be a passive investor, I highly encourage you to ask questions, to be involved, to read the reports, to review the updates of what's going on with the property, because there's so much to learn there. And just as you mentioned, I mean, you can chip away at your own understanding. It can feel super overwhelming, but every new endeavor that you take on in your life can be overwhelming in the beginning. So what are you going to do to commit to your own learning and allow that to open up new opportunities in the future? So I love that, and I appreciate that very much.
And you're not going to get that from your stockbroker, right? Like, they're not going to teach you the ins and outs of how to do equities and those kinds of things. And they might try to kind of give you a little nugget of something, but you're not going to go anywhere with it. So this is something you can really build on. And what I found, and this is what I wasn't expecting when I got into multifamily real estate, is you meet people who are all on the same page of trying to continue to educate. They're trying to build a community. Sure. I mean, maybe if two different investors are in the exact same market competing on the same deal, you might have a little competition from that perspective. But I have not found that of all the people I've met in real estate, they're trying to withhold information and not really share like how to help each individual kind of get to that next stage and provide that value.
Yeah, it's a beautiful community because it truly is the, it's actually the reality of abundance, right? Everyone can benefit when others benefit. And it's in practice in the multifamily real estate space because we can all collaborate on deals. We can collaborate on opportunities. And certainly there are times, as you mentioned, where there's a little bit of competition, but I think it's healthy and it allows us to get, improve ourselves and improve to, become the next highest version of ourselves, which really leads me into the next part of the discussion that I want to talk to you about is how are you growing as an individual? I know that, someone like yourself who's performing at the highest level in so many different capacities, how are you investing in yourself?
Yeah, I think that's always a challenge. And, it's kind of like, what is that incentive? What is that you're chasing? For me, while the actual kind of, the concept of having line part capital and growing a business and starting, like, you obviously have goals, right? Like, you have, like, I want to be able to slowly grow a portfolio. And obviously I'm very kind of early in the process compared to a lot of your guests who come in with these amazing numbers of units owned and controlled numbers and dollar value and things like that. But what drives me is to like continue to be, and which I've kind of learned this through being exposed to other people in the real estate and kind of in this community where there's always this idea of like personal growth mindset, kind of refocusing yourselves. And this is what helps kind of raise the bar a little bit for my own business, right? Like, how do I take action, like, and bring energy to what I'm trying to do? After going to a full day's worth of work, spending some time with the family, even though I've set aside time for my real estate project or real estate business, how do I still make it effective? And as you know, just getting started is the hardest thing, right? That getting that inertia and the momentum going is really difficult. And there's plenty of times when there's self-doubt, like, why am I even doing this? Like, why don't I just stick with my career that I have achieved? It's clearly working okay for me. Why do I need to even push my limits? But as you start to kind of really depend and rely on these people, you kind of get that encouragement, and you can really build that foundation and the network of people to kind of help you through that. So then what helps me with that is that it kind of carries over then to not only for myself, but again, kind of spreading that knowledge and building that growth model for my kids, and kind of knowing what am I going to share with them as they get older. The other thing to invest in myself is just health, right? Like to bring that energy that I was talking about. Something I've kind of taken on in the last couple of years is intermittent fasting, and it's kind of a lifestyle that's really been helpful. It's not just a diet fad, and it's really helped create a different level of energy that I don't get fatigued or beaten down by a rough day, and I still can bring a lot to the table. And as you can imagine, my kiddos aren't giving me any slack. They don't care how hard my day was. So when I come back home, they expect me to be out in the backyard and throwing football with them and all those kinds of things. So it's really important for me to kind of be able to invest that time and energy myself, to just because I got a lot to kind of show up for.
Yeah, no doubt. And one of the things that really stuck out to me that you just mentioned there is that getting started can be the hardest part. And I actually just read a book recently by Michael Hyatt, and many of our listeners are aware of Michael Hyatt, and it's actually called The Best Year Ever. And I thought it was so interesting what he said about goals. And if you recall the concept of eating that frog, right? It's like do the hardest thing first, and then everything else will kind of get easier from there. He actually said the opposite. He said, do the easiest thing first. He's like, fall over the starting line. He's like, you can crumble and fall down and you're still going to cross the start line. Create a little bit of momentum for yourself. So if you can just get started, it's amazing. Yeah. Like one thing I've been wanting to do myself is write a book. And you know what I said is I'm just going to create a habit to write for 5 minutes a day. It's amazing because I'll sit down and I'll start writing. It's like, oh, it's already been 15 minutes and I've actually made some progress here, and it's not as bad as I told myself it would be. So it's really interesting how just getting started can actually create more energy for yourself. Have you experienced that yourself?
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right, because once you start to see, okay, well, I'm actually doing something constructive, I am kind of making progress, then you realize if I can just piece several of those together, maybe now I've kind of made a much bigger leap than what I thought with when I started at time zero. And that's what I found is it's you got to keep plugging along. I mean, it's too easy to just kind of step away and say, just throw your hands up in the air, and it's just not worth my time and effort. And everyone else has been able to achieve it because, and you can list 5 different reasons that they got to achieve and I can. And that's not really the case. When you really sit down and talk to everyone, everyone's kind of got their own story and their unique path. And they made it, so why not you, essentially? So.
Speaking of story and unique path, I'd love to know, I mean, have there been any sort of failures along the way that have really stuck out to you that have been big lessons for your own journey that you've used for later success, or just curious?
Absolutely. Being in medicine, especially in the surgical field, that's kind of what a lot of our education is kind of premised on, meaning not that we constantly are making mistakes, but you have to you're always trying to get better, right? So like as soon as we throughout our training, even now we're professionals and fully on our own, if there's ever, like, let's say a case doesn't go well or a procedure go well or has a bad outcome or not unintended outcome, we are constantly reviewing it. We're constantly trying to say, okay, how do we make sure that never happens again? Or how do we make ourselves better? Because ultimately, like, when there are these failures, it's not just, for example, in real estate, if you have a failure, no one likes it. But you learn your lesson, you kind of take your hits, and you kind of move on to the next project and make sure, okay, well, I'm not going to let that happen again. In medicine, there's a lot more at stake, right? So like we come into a plan, we make a plan for surgery, just like you make a plan for a real estate project. But we come with a plan that nothing's going to happen and it's going to go perfect. And that's kind of like the expectation. So when it doesn't, I mean, it takes a lot out of you. I mean, you kind of tell yourself that will never happen again. You kind of eats you up inside. You're kind of distracted at home and you think about it all the time. So when there's a failure in my line of work, it hits home pretty in a rough way. So with that kind of idea, as I kind of carry it over to real estate, has everything gone exactly to the way I underwrote it or analyzed it? No, but at least while it may have made me take a step back from how much of a risky deal to get into, it's probably been, it's probably protected me in the long run. So it may set me back a little bit in terms of the rate at which I can grow and scale, but hopefully I'm making the right decisions as I move forward. On this unit complex I did recently, or about a year ago, I analyzed it, thought I figured everything out, talked to everybody, dotted every I, crossed every T. And then when I got into it, I started thinking maybe I dotted every I and crossed every T on someone else's page, because there's so many things that came up that I didn't anticipate. And all were manageable, and it was okay. But I learned so much out of that. I'm going to classify as a failure because it didn't go to the plan of, despite all the contingencies I had already thought of. But I learned so much of it, and it's there's no dollar value to put on that, right? It's so incredibly valuable for that.
Yeah, I've had those lessons myself. I can definitely tell you that, and it's painful when you go through it, but it's valuable when you go through the other side of it. I know that for sure. I'd be curious to know, just as you mentioned there, in terms of in your medical practice, if there's a failure, it can be much more, impactful than a failure that you can experience in your real estate business or business otherwise. How do you manage your psychology from that capacity? Because I feel like that's got to be at the utmost importance there.
It is, yeah, and because it's critical, because it involves another human being, right? So, in general, I think when there's a failure in any walk of life, like I just want to run away, I just want to be somewhere else, right? Or I'm just going to not acknowledge it. The lesson I've learned with medicine and any failures in my kind of line of work is you got to deal with it head on, and you can't ignore a patient. You gotta talk them through it. You gotta talk yourself through it. You really rely heavily on your colleagues as, hey, has this ever happened to you? How did you handle it? And I think what's helpful is no one really takes it on you. No one ridicules you, because everyone's been there. If you haven't been, you're gonna be there. And it is just the worst feeling to know that you may have played a role in something not working out as well as possible for a patient. Now, it may be completely out of your control, and maybe it really has nothing to do with what we physically did, but that connection with that patient is so paramount. It's hard to kind of walk away from that. So I think the psychology of it is you got to have the right mentality to be ready and expect things are going to happen. And when they do, you kind of, you talk your way through that and kind of direct it head on with the patients, and not only with the patient, but yourself. There's no reason to hide behind it. And you can then build on that and see what you're going to go with from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just seems like something where it just comes back to responsibility. At the end of the day, it's about being responsible. It's about, when you make a mistake, owning up to it and saying, look, I'm here and I'll do anything I can to rectify the situation as much as possible. But, at the end of the day, it is what it is. There are risks in every part of our life, and whether it's our business or, medically, if you're obviously a practitioner there, you've got to be aware of that. And so having an eyes wide open sort of perspective, I think, is important as well. But then also being, resourceful and having others that you can lean on to say, hey, I made a mistake here. What do I need to do? And taking that responsibility. So I think that's really important. Nimesh, who are your role models, would you say?
I've thought about this over the years, because, in different lines of work or different levels of, depending on what kind of professional you come across other people who have role models. They talk about it. And I've always struggled as I've thought about that over the years, like I've kind of always struggled, like who is my one role model or one or two that I look up to? And because you might like someone because, wow, so-and-so is a great entrepreneur and has achieved so much, but then you realize, man, they really don't do much to give back to their community or their world, right? Or you might find someone who's extremely inspirational, a great personal growth leader, but then they're on their third marriage, right? So, which you might have 10 characteristics that you really want to find the top percentage or reach the top tier at, but it's going to be hard to find the one or two people who can check off that box for every one of those 10 categories versus, finding 10 different people who maybe person A is great at this, and the other person great at something else that you want to achieve. And that's easy said than done, because you can look at all these people in the media who made a big name for themselves and kind of go to that. But what I found, I think ultimately, this might sound odd, is I found a lot of my role models are actually just the people I interact with on a daily basis. Is it a colleague that great at certain surgical skill that I'm not quite as good at yet, or am I as generous as my neighbor is, or can I lead people the way my CEO is, or my parents, or my wife, even like my youngest kid, unsolicited. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times friends and family have commented like how he's always got a smile on his face. He always lights up the room. I mean, when's the last time you heard an adult described that way, right? And my 5-year-old never went to a course on how to project positive attitude or watch a podcast. And I just think of him, I'm very mindful of him as I go through my own days. Like, how do I get people to think about that way about myself and throughout my just day-to-day work? So when I think of role models, it's really about the people who are in my little life circle who kind of deal with what I deal with. And while she's much better at that particular part of the day than I am. And I just want to kind of emulate that. And I think that's what a role model comes down to be, right? It's always nice to kind of say some big name person is my role. And I'm not to say you can't take away those great things, but I think there's a little bit more impact on those who are directly around you, and you can get kind of that same growth, that same improvement in your own lifestyle from that.
Are you someone who's seriously looking to elevate your life, your business, your real estate portfolio, your cash flow, your deal opportunities, your access to opportunities, your network this year? Well, if that's you, then I invite you to visit coachwithtyler.com, because I'm currently opening up a few coaching spots for people like you who want to close the gap from where you are to where you want to be, and really, expand that beyond your wildest dreams and explode your business, explode your deal opportunities, explode your vision for what you're looking to create. If that's you, I invite you to visit coachwithtyler.com. I really have to tell you that this is not for everyone. This is only for those who are decisive. They're committed. They're willing to do whatever it takes. They're willing to invest time, energy, and resources into themselves to get to where they want to be and to live a life without limits, to elevate to a life without limits, which is really what we're all about on this show. If that is you, again, I invite you to visit coachwithtyler.com. Again, that's coachwithtyler.com. I'm inspired by the reminder and the seed that you've planted into my mind and the minds of the listeners, the viewers out there, because, it doesn't have to be Jeff Bezos. It doesn't have to be, these people who are, theoretically changing the world. Every individual has their own impact on the world and people around them. And it's really a domino effect that you can observe, and you can train your mind to look out for other sort of behaviors that you can implement into your own life and become a more well-rounded individual, the greatest version of yourself. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I love that. Actually, Nimesh, I'd love to know what are you most excited about these days? What's getting you amped up today? It's interesting. I'm 42 years old, and kind of going back to a little bit of the point of my career I'm at. So, my practice 10 years, I've built a good practice that's sustainable right now. And obviously that's going to take continued work and effort, and then continued modification improvement. And I've kind of that light bulb turned on that I need to start thinking about something else. And I got my doors open to real estate. And again, like I touched base on it, the people I got introduced to, I mean, it's almost addictive. I mean, every time I learn a tidbit of information or a new pearl from someone from a different walk of life, I'm like, well, how did you do that? My mind just feels blown every other week when I come across a new person or a new book that I was turned on to by someone else. And there's just so much more out there. Medicine's great and all, but the one negative part of medicine is it is put your head down and grind it out. You follow this pathway, and you'll, after 8, 10, 12 years, I hate to even say those numbers, you're going to end up with a certain goal. And it's good and it's structured, but it closes. It's almost like puts blinders on to other aspects of life. So what I'm really excited about right now is I'm 42, and I feel like I'm just now turning things on and kind of exposing myself to so many things I don't think I would have, because I was so focused on getting to my education, building my practice. And now there's not just pressure. I wouldn't call it pressure because that sounds like a negative connotation, but I'm excited to learn for myself. But then what I'm really excited about is, even if it doesn't pertain to me, I have 4 little guys to pass it on to, and they may not follow, again, like I said, my path or my formula, but I might shed some light to something that maybe not be interesting to me, but they may just go with it and kind of take it and run with it, And I think that's what's really exciting right now, that there's really no stone to leave unturned at this point. I'm like you. I'm addicted to learning and what
Yeah.
it can mean for my life, and I'm just so curious. The more I've learned, the more I realize that I don't know, and the more that I can give to other people. So it is really exciting, and that's one of the things I love about real estate as well. So I appreciate you sharing that. Hey, we're going to transition into our rapid fire section. We call it the
Okay.
Rare Air Questionnaire. It's all about raising the bar. It's all about expanding your limits and really setting the bar to your next intention. So I'd love to know just a few things here. What would you say are the top 2 or 3 most impactful books that you've read, and why?
Yeah, I would say there's a book called Obstacles the Way by Ryan Holiday. It was an absolute game changer for me. It's kind of based on, without trying to make it too academic, the philosophy of some stoicism, but he makes it very, very applicable to day-to-day, modern lifestyle. And it's really about, there are going to be, things are going to happen. It's unavoidable. And there's this idea that it's either an obstacle or a burden or a blessing. But the real question is, are they really mutually exclusive, right? So like, can an obstacle be an opportunity? Can it be a blessing? And this isn't just it's a blessing in disguise. It is, okay, that's clearly an obstacle. What do we have to do to navigate around it? What doors does it open that wouldn't have opened unless that obstacle came in the way? So, real life example right now, like the way we practice medicine, if the current situation hadn't happened, we wouldn't be doing virtual visits or telehealth medicine, which is completely the main way we're practicing medicine at the moment. Now, it's not going to be the primary way we practice medicine going forward, but now it's definitely here to stay. And I think it creates a way to think. That what he talks about in this book is, how do you want to, if an obstacle occurs, what is your perception of it? You have complete control on that. You can decide, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Until then, it's just something, an event. It's just something that's happened, but you label it whether it's good or bad. And then once you've labeled it, what's going to be your action with it? So there's really, when you kind of think of things that way, everything is manageable, right? Like, so is it good or bad? Does it have to be bad? Not necessarily. And it really puts things in perspective a bit to kind of not make it feel like, oh, wow, everything's falling apart around you.
Yeah, and sometimes an obstacle can be perhaps even a blessing, right? A blessing in disguise.
Absolutely.
That's why I like to talk about failure, because sometimes it teaches us a lesson that we would never have learned otherwise if we were just living in the comfort of, continual success, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. What would you go ahead?
Oh no, and a couple other quick books I was going to mention. Like I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. I mean, he does a lot on on leadership, and one of his books, Start by Asking Why. Again, it has to do with the substance behind what you're doing, and I think something that comes up often. David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me is just, an eye opener. And he's got that chapter about. Have you read it?
I actually have not, and I'm ashamed to say that.
Oh no, it's not I just recently I've heard about it. I just recently read it, and he has this chapter titled "Taking Souls," and it sounds very dark, but it is so impactful, and wow. It's such a driving motivator. So I think just getting those kind of tidbits of information together really makes a big difference.
All right, you're pushing me. I'm going to do it. How many people have told me to read that book? I can't even tell you. Right? It's like, it's off the charts. So yeah, we'll definitely have to, I'll read that book, and we'll put all links in the show notes here to all these great books. I appreciate you sharing that. And talk to me, what would you say the biggest way that you elevate your life on a daily basis is?
Yeah, I think I think what it comes down to is gratitude. And what I mean by that is not just about, saying thank you to everyone around you all the time. It's really stepping back and genuinely appreciating what you have around you. It's interesting, again, in my line of work, when someone gets hurt, they're always from day one asking, when do I get back to quote unquote normal? Which is a very fair question. But, if you carry that forward, even like our current situation, right? Only thing that's in the news is, when do we get back to a normal that we're used to, or will there be a normal? I bet you 6 weeks ago, before all this happened, how many people were out there complaining about their current situation, their current life, right? Now, all we can think about is, how do I get back to that? So I think really going through life, appreciating, having that gratitude of what's really in front of you. As simple as, having the internet work in your house and cable and the ability to go to the grocery store without wearing a mask, all those little things. It really puts things in perspective by having that gratitude. And it just makes life just easier to kind of take on and not be stuck in this kind of natural way where we all want to complain and find out something to gripe about.
Yeah, so true. And it's really interesting to reframe that and say, hey, before this happened, many people were complaining about their circumstances. And then when this pattern interrupt occurred in the entire planet, everyone's saying, let me get back to what I was complaining about. It is really interesting to reframe it in that capacity, and to recognize that in any moment, there's always good. There's always good things that you can be grateful for and thoughtful about and intentionally grateful for. So what's the biggest way that you elevate others around you, Nimesh?
I think knowing how I try to challenge myself and elevate myself, I try to actively see that in those around me. I believe, I may be optimistic. I generally believe in the good of people. I think everyone has good intentions, and we all know that's not true, but I want to walk in when I first meet someone and believe in that. And when you listen to them and hear what they're trying to achieve, and I think everyone has a sincere goal, and the way I try to elevate things is try to nurture that, encourage it. Fill in the gaps if I can see that they're truly struggling with something, and not to advise or be critical or say, hey, you need to do this, but try to just steer that in the right direction. Because ultimately, if we have everyone trying to do something like that, we're all going to be in good shape. I may not connect with what they're doing or understand what they're doing, but I think at the end of the day, if they're doing it for genuine purposes, I would like to be a part of that and help that out.
Well, you've certainly helped out our listeners today. Really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and so much gold wisdom here today. Nimesh, is there any other parting thoughts or words of wisdom that you share with Elevate Nation today?
Yeah, I would say, I think always look for weak spots, in you as an individual, right? It's not to be overly critical about yourself, but just be honest with yourself and say, if you're not as good at something as somebody else or as you want to be, just kind of same thing, deal with it head on, put in the steps to improve on that. And it's out there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to do it alone. There's someone out there who's already done it. And I think there's so much great content out there that's easily accessible. There's never a moment to feel helpless or this will never work. You can move the needle in the right direction.
That's awesome. It's so true. And I love just taking a real inventory of yourself and saying, hey, like what's good, what's bad, what can I improve on today? And that's what Elevate's all about. So I really, really appreciate you being here on the show today. Tell Elevate Nation how they can learn more about what you're doing and engage with you along your journey.
Yeah, I would love that. They can reach me at any time at my email address. It's Nimesh Patel. It's NIMESHPATEL at lionparkcap, LIONPARKCAP.com. And I'm always connecting with people. And once we kind of email back and forth, I'm happy to exchange phone numbers and go from there. But I'm looking to connect with people just like I think anyone else is. And whether it's real estate or medicine or just any aspect of things, I would love to kind of connect with anybody.
Well, and as you can tell, this is a genuine individual. This is a genuine, caring person. So I highly encourage you to take him up on his invitation to engage with him. We'll definitely put information there in the show notes in terms of following up. And I encourage you to re-listen to the show because there's a lot here. There's a lot of actionable wisdom. And so you want to distill this down. What are your top 3 takeaways? What are your top 3 distinctions? And what can you do to teach this to someone else? Because the teacher is really who learns the most. The teacher is who really anchors their own understanding into their central nervous system. And I think it's such an exciting concept to be able to share this wisdom with other people. So if you're also listening on your phone, take a screenshot and post it on social media, tag a friend who you want to teach this information to. And beyond this, take massive action because no one else is going to do it for you. And knowledge is only potential power. Action is the real power. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for being on the show, Nimesh.
Yeah, Tyler, I wanted to thank you. I really appreciate you and the value you bring with this podcast. I mean, the other guests you've had on your show have just been really awesome. And I'm extremely humbled to be part of that group. So thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, well, thank you so much for saying that. And you are absolutely a phenomenal individual. So thank you so much for being here. And Elevate Nation, we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Elevate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to elevate your results by taking immediate action on what you learned. For more, visit elevatepod.com.